Planning Committee and the special meeting of the Board of Directors on Tuesday, April 26th, and we are called to order. Do we have any changes to the agenda? Okay, hearing none, then we'll move to public comment. This time is reserved for members of the public to address this board on matters under our jurisdiction, but not on today's agenda. Does any member of the public wish to be heard? Okay, seeing none, then we have approval of minutes, and we did approve these with our board meeting in April. Do they need reapproval?
I don't think so. If they've been approved at the board, then they shouldn't need to come back here.
Okay,
Other than just to make sure the board, yeah, again, the assumption was that everybody was fine with them. And since this is a committee of the whole, they should be okay as approved.
they were, I'd asked for a revision in those minutes, and I can see on this version that change has been made, so.
Okay. That's
Seems
good.
like, okay. All right, then, project
Why don't we go ahead,
update.
just for the heck of it, why don't we go ahead and approve them, just to reflect the fact that the changes were made. And so we can report back at the board then that your recommendations were handled.
Okay,
Make a motion, we approve them as amended.
thanks, Gene.
I'll second Ross.
Thanks, Fred. Gene, your vote?
Yes.
Fred?
Yes.
Catherine?
Yes.
John, are you on?
Yeah, I'm on the phone, Ross. I'm sorry. I was driving. That's why I had my cell phone on mute. I didn't want there to be distraction. But yes, I'm a yes.
Okay, thanks, John. And I'm a yes, so the minutes are approved. Now we'll move on to item E, project update, master plan.
Okay, as you saw on the status of projects, the plans were submitted on time, and they have been accepted, and they are in plan review.
Thanks.
So the
Questions, comments?
wait- The wait begins.
Yeah, the wait begins for comments to come back, corrections to be done, etc.
So we anticipate if everything goes according to normal, then by next April, we should have a permit.
Probably best case scenario, about 14 months.
14 months. Okay, so we're looking at June, July.
Yeah, that's what Michael is shooting for. If you just went through the regular normal processes, it could take 18. But Michael feels he can keep that fast tracked a bit by regularly communicating with the various reviewers and
Well, I think
speed it up.
all of the pre-work that was done to meet with
Yes.
them to get this approved and understand our thinking with this, with the alternate means of compliance and everything else should
Right.
also help speed
Should
that up.
help as well.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Russ, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Gene.
Can I, on this master plan, Dave, you're there, right? You keep calling it the retro or the earthquake seismic project. What percentage of it is seismic? It's a very small percentage, the emergency room. Why are we calling it seismic?
It's actually a little more than that, Gene. I mean, yes, it's the ER, but it also adds shear walls and and roof stuff in acute care and the administrative wing. It also, all of the HVAC systems are upgraded because existing ones don't meet the seismic requirements. And, piping and sprinkler piping doesn't meet seismic requirements. So actually, a large portion can be called a seismic upgrade.
Okay, okay. At one point you said we could do just the seismic, leave everything the way it is for just over $1 million. Just do shear walls.
I don't know that. I don't remember making that actual dollar statement, but in other words, could we just do the seismic? Possibly, but then we still end up with a building that the heating and air conditioning may or may not work.
Okay, I was just trying to figure out,
Yeah.
we're calling it seismic. I don't want to deceive anyone.
It's a
It's a remodel.
combination. It's a combination of a seismic
Is there
upgrade.
something else you would recommend calling it, Gene, or?
Yeah,
Like seismic slash,
something remodel
upgrade
or
or-
whatever.
Yeah.
The seismic doesn't sound very sexy. It sounds like something that's boring.
Yeah.
We need to give it a name that people would be more excited about. Do you know what I'm saying?
yeah, we hear you.
We're open to suggestions on that. I mean, obviously, for HCI, we have called it, I think, a remodel and seismic upgrade.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, for sake of time, we should think about calling it something that the public would embrace better. What you call it, and the perception, you get a
Yeah.
perception.
Yeah.
Good idea, Gene.
Okay. All right, that's it. Thanks, Russ.
Okay.
Sure.
If anybody has any ideas, please just forward them on to us and we'll get those out to everybody to look at.
Okay, the item 2, SPC 4D material testing. What's that about, Bob?
Okay, in order, because our seismic upgrade of the building is being done under what's called the 4D program, requires taking samples of the existing structure. The wood beams need to be analyzed. We have to take pieces of the masonry and we have to destructively test them. And there's a whole set of plans just for that. And that's been approved, I think previously by the board on the cost. I'd have to verify that.
Yeah.
But those plans got held up at HCI. And so I was pushing our structural engineer to get those in, and he did so. And so those separate little set of drawings, which is not a whole lot of sheets, are in HCI being reviewed at this time.
But that's necessary for us to do this step before we go any further with
Yes,
the rest of the plans.
we cannot go further before the plan review is completed. The information from the material testing has to be included with the master project at HCI.
Primarily to make sure that what condition the building really is in
Right.
structurally. Yeah.
Is the CMU walls as strong as the engineer is saying they are? So we take a section of them, we send them to a lab, they actually break them. And those determinations, a timber specialist is going to have to look at all of the rafters and determine what grade they are. It's not a whole lot of work, but we have to take some concrete samples out of foundations and have those broken to make sure what kind of PSI that they are rated at. And that is all determined, that all becomes part of the calculations from the structural engineer that the seismic upgrade will meet what HCI requires.
And then they have to put it back together.
Oh, yes. The cost for that also included taking the samples out and then putting cement blocks back in where we cut them out, infilling the concrete where we take samples, et cetera.
Boy, there's a potential can of worms there. If there's some kind of defect in our original materials, then that may affect.
Good.
Our stuff.
Absolutely. Now, our structural engineer has walked the building, looked at everything very, very thoroughly. He doesn't believe there will be surprises, but you never know. I mean, there's hospital projects that have been shut down for years due to a missed something. We hope not to be there, but yeah, I have been pushing for a while to get these submitted because I didn't want any surprises. And HCI was kind of holding it up, and then all of a sudden they're saying, "Oh, we got to get done ASAP." So I'm not sure, who really dropped the ball there. I don't believe it was us. I don't believe it was our architect or structural engineer. I mean, I'm not trying to point fingers, but it seemed to have been dropped on the HCI end.
Okay. All right. Questions, comments?
Could have been Ross's fault.
Could have been. I should open that email. Okay, number 3, the new admin building.
All right, so the latest from the architect, his portion of the plans is done. The mechanical engineer has assured me that his portions of the drawings were submitted, and I didn't call him today, but were submitted today Monday, to the architect, and the architect plans on submitting the plans to the county tomorrow.
And so once that's completed, then they will, if they're all in order, then a building permit would be
Right.
issued, or?
Yeah, so, but there will probably be one round of corrections, possibly.
Yeah.
But as you know, the county is much quicker than HCI. So
So,
it's a plan review at the county is, a couple months long as usually. It's not an extensive project. I mean, it's a few interior walls.
Yeah.
It's some relocation of air conditioning ducts. It's some redoing of electrical, adding some doors and frames. So it should go through fairly quickly, I would think.
I would think so too.
Bob, could I ask him a question, Russ? I don't know.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Are there things that could be done while we're sitting, like the stucco repair on the back of the building where it's peeling? I know we're going to do something about that.
yeah,
I actually had already planned to do that. The only reason we haven't started is because of the emergency project for the pharmacy HVAC. The guy that was going to do the stucco for me, that's one of my employees, is right now full-time on pharmacy HVAC. As soon as he wraps that up and a couple other little minor things, we're going to be down there pressure washing and patching the stucco.
Okay, thank you.
All right, makes sense. Any other questions, comments about the admin building? Okay, then,
Russ, bottom line, when do you think that, that old building where finance is at, they're crammed in there, and I know they would love to get out of there and get into the new one, even if we're not doing the construction, remodel, whatever it is. When do you think there could be occupancy in there, specifically for finance?
Well, obviously, the entire building is under one permit, and the entire project has to be constructed by a contractor who will have to bid. So I'm waiting right now on having complete plans. I would like them to have gone through at least one plan review at the county before we put them out to bid, so that we know there's not going to be a lot of change orders. So obviously, we're probably a couple of months away from putting it out to bid, maybe a month. At the soonest, it'll then have to go out to bid for probably a period of 4 to maybe 6 weeks. And then we will accept the bids and we'll review them as a committee and decide who's going to do the work. And then at that point, by then we should have a building permit with the county and we should be able to award the contract to proceed with the work. So, and I'm assuming the work's going to take a couple of months, minimum 2 to 3 months. So
It could be 6 or 8 months, then we could actually have some occupancy in it.
I would think so,
that
yes.
seems reasonable.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
so on that topic you were talking about, Bob, would it be prudent to start that bidding process now? I realize that there might be changes to the plans through the plan check process, but if we have a contractor on board, on or after, shortly after the time the permit gets issued, boy, from a time perspective, it sure would be a lot more efficient.
I agree. And we could do that. In other words, I mean, within a day or two, I could have plans relatively complete to go out to bid.
Yeah.
People look at that 2 different ways. Yes, if we were under a real crunch to get into the building, we would absolutely do that. Understand that change orders always come through at about 1.5 times the cost that if they were included in the plans. So there's the caveat to trying to push it quicker.
I see. Okay. Yeah, I just hate to see this get drug out for 4 more months before we actually start doing any work, which is what we're actually looking at.
Yeah, we can certainly look at that and see if we want to try and push that a little quicker.
Well,
So maybe
Yeah.
after that first plan check review would be the prudent thing to do, like you were advising.
I'm sorry, Tim was talking to me.
I was saying that then your advice earlier about putting it out to bid after the first plan check review might be the best option.
I would think so. Like I said, I was just asking Bob, again, have we even seen the plans yet that the architect has drawn? And he says, not yet. So I think, obviously, if we can get our hands on those, Bob
I can have those.
can certainly
later.
take a look at those and see what he thinks and what condition those are in. At least give us a little better feel.
Yeah, I should have those later this week. In other words, by the time he has them completely pulled together and submitted to the county, in theory tomorrow, he can forward them to me. We can take a look at them. And then we can make a decision if we want to proceed with, getting costing.
So if after the first plan check review, there's not substantial things that the county is asking for, then maybe we can start moving forward with the bidding process at that point.
That's my recommendation, but I'm open to whatever.
I would agree
Bob,
with that.
are there going to be any materials that might be a problem getting when we are ready? Are we using wooden studs or metal studs? Is the material available?
Yes, unfortunately, building materials like everything else is up. So, we're going to be paying a little bit premium. I mean, the building is wood framed. And so, I assume we would go in with wood frames versus trying to mix a mixture of metal and wood, which is a little more difficult. So yeah, it's spec'd as wood, wood studs. And we all know that they're 2 and 3 times what they were a year and a half ago. So, but they're available. It's not like there's stuff. There's not, I don't believe there's anything going into the building that is not really available. I mean, we got a hot water heater, that shouldn't be an issue. Doors and frames shouldn't be an issue. Studs, drywall, electrical wiring. I haven't heard that there's any problem with getting it. It's just gotten more expensive.
Now, on the septic tank, the occupancy before, when they put it in, I don't know if they've got 2 or 3 in there. Do you know how many are there, or if will be compliant with the number of people in the area or working in the building or possible?
It was previously, when it was built, it was a business occupancy and 5 suites, each suite having a couple of restrooms. And we are still doing a business occupancy with the same amount of restrooms. It's just a couple of them changed to ADA accessible. So the septic system should be just fine.
Okay. Do you know how many are there? How many tanks?
Well, most septic systems are a dual tank system. I have not pulled the lids and checked for sure, but I would assume before we occupy, we'll probably have them pumped and checked by one of our local contractors, just to be on the safe side.
Okay, thank you.
It's not like they've had a huge use.
No,
For the last-
it's had very little
10
use,
years,
just the church on weekends for years.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions or comments on the admin building? All right, then we'll move to the emergency generator.
Okay, so that just, I think yesterday came out of first plan review. Well, I should say first back check, not first plan review. So they have been through plan review twice. There was a substantial amount of corrections the first go around. The second time it came back, I believe there was 6 comments, all of them very minor. I had a conversation with the architect this morning and answered a couple of questions. They should have those particular questions answered here in a matter of a few days, and we'll submit back, and then in theory, we should be issued a permit on that project.
That's good news.
Yep. Can
Excellent.
I backtrack what we were talking about earlier? The words, it's not important. I don't care. It's just perception. The word hospital improvement, improve is a positive word as opposed to upgrade. Upgrade, it's different. But at any rate, it's just.
That's a good one. It's a good word.
Well, you know, I don't mean to be picky or anything. I'm not trying to be weird, but we want people to perceive what we're doing as a positive thing and necessary, not something we're fighting like seismic.
All right.
Okay, thank you.
So once the permit's issued for the emergency generator, what are we looking at time-wise to replace that?
I've been working on that substantially, and I think there is something.
We've got some more things to talk about.
Right, we have some more things to talk about, and I believe, yeah, the quote is in here. Okay, so what we talked about was that the equipment, in order to save costs, because if we have the contractor supply the generator and transfer switches, they are going to mark them up. And I had a conversation with Quinn Caterpillar and said, if we purchase them as the owner, do we get the same price as the contractor? And he assured me you get the exact same price. So then, I had a conversation with Dave and with Scott Nave, and to make sure that we can do all of that, and we can. What this will go out to bid as is that all the work will be done by the contractor, and it will spell out the pieces of equipment that will be supplied by owner. So that being said, I also checked with our supplier at Quinn and said, how soon can I have a generator? Because I'd like to have one in like 5 months. And I got told, unfortunately, that generators right now, Oshpod shaker tabled units, are taking a year to build.
Oh, no.
So that being said, I'm trying to fast track this because of multiple issues that we'll kind of get into. So what I perceive happening is the plans will get approved here, hopefully in the next month or so. We can request the building permit to be issued whenever we want within a year after that date. But what I would like to do is if you guys approve it today, for us to go ahead with purchasing the equipment, because we don't get into the queue until we hand them a purchase order to order the equipment. So whenever we do that, then we're looking at about a year from now. But what we can do is we can, during the first number of months, we can get this out to bid, get some good quality bids in, give them plenty of time. And then I would hope to award the contract to start the work 4 to 6 months prior to receiving the equipment. Because there's a substantial amount of work that has to happen, getting conduiting underground and around the building and the foundations for the generator in and a whole lot of things like that, which can proceed. And then when the equipment arrives, it's a simple matter of craning it into position, putting the transfer switches in, and then completing the wiring and that sort of thing. That's kind of where I'm looking at to try and fast track this, because I went, holy smoke. I've put a few generators in over the years, and I've never had them take this long. I was absolutely floored when they said a year. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of suppliers who do shaker tabled California hospital generators. Obviously, I am going to pursue the one other manufacturer that I'm aware of, which is Cummings Onan, and see whether they could produce it and what their costs would be before I would award this purchase order to Quinn, because that is one of the requirements that Scott has, is that we get multiple bids. So, so I would have a little legwork to do here right off the bat of getting an order in place, all in appropriate manner. And then we would obviously proceed then with trying to fast track getting into the work prior to the equipment arriving. And that's the best that I can come up with. I really expected that we could have that thing here in 6 months and we'd be setting it and we'd be off and going. And I found out I was wrong.
Well, maybe by going out to bid with it like this, maybe the competition will make that process a little faster. Who knows?
Hopefully. Yeah.
Bob, with all of the rural hospitals going out of business and consolidation, different things happening, is it possible there could be a slightly used one that would work perfect for us because it's only a backup, right? And so is
Well,
that a
for us,
possibility?
it's more than that.
Well, I mean, Gene, you're absolutely right. There might be, but it would only be if somebody did their generator project in the last couple of years, because the shaker table requirement for all of this equipment is relatively new. I would love to do that, but also anything that's very old won't meet the seismic criteria, and then secondarily won't meet air pollution. See, I have to permit this with the air pollution control district.
I was thinking of a fairly new one. It was just a thought,
No, it's a good idea.
We certainly can, maybe ask around some of the hospitals and see if somebody's got 1,000 kW. But for a small rural hospital, that's a very big generator.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, because one of the things we found is most of the rural hospitals were in a similar situation as we were. When they were built, they went up with minimum requirements only for the equipment that needs to be attached to that emergency power. And it really wasn't until we got into some of the fire issues and so forth, and a couple of other hospitals with some earthquake damage and stuff like this, that they uncovered that, gee, you guys are pretty smart in going for a generator that will power everything. Because like I said, that's we found out with the fire when half the place didn't work.
Right.
So you're beginning to see these hospitals upgrade to bigger emergency generators and stuff like that. So like I said, not a lot of them probably going to have what we need, but
Yeah, it wouldn't hurt to ask around.
yeah. And, again, a person to ask might be Mike. Mike deals with so many rural hospitals. I don't know if he's familiar with any that have gone out of business or.
Oh, Michael Ryan.
Mike Ryan.
Yeah, we can certainly reach out and see if somebody might have one sitting around that was quite new. I mean, that size could come from any size hospital. I mean,
the
hospitals in Bakersfield, most of them have, about 1,000 to 1,200, kilowatt generators, multiples of 2 or 3 for bigger hospitals.
Yeah.
So,
Maybe-
but yeah.
Maybe Quinn would be, since they're in the business, they might know of one that's slightly used that we could get right away. That would work.
I'll certainly reach out to our person at Quinn.
Thanks. Sorry to take so much time on.
No, there's valuable points.
It's good points. It never hurts to ask.
Okay, any other questions on this segment of the emergency generator? We've got, our temporary one, the number one failure, and then we have an action item later. But any other questions at this point on the emergency generator? Okay, then tell us about the number one failure.
All right, yeah. What we call it generator number 1, because it was the first one to go in at the hospital in 1965. Waukesha Onan. Waukesha is the engine, Onan's the generator piece of it. It was rebuilt, I believe, about 10 years ago by Quinn. And I reached out to them about whether we thought we could rebuild it again. And they said when they rebuilt it the last time, that it had a lot of erosion on the metal surfaces between the head and the block, and they don't believe it can be rebuilt. I am going to pursue an option to look at to get them to pull the head and make an assessment. And I'll explain why. Because the temporary generator that we've brought in is fairly pricey. It runs about $4,200 a month, but that includes the maintenance on it and various things. So, but that's still a lot of money. So if I could resurrect that old generator, let's just say for $8,000, and we could get the temporary out of here, that would work. But as far as where the road we're mainly going down, I mean, that's a side thing that I'm going to pursue here in the next few days. But I think I'm going to be told that they are not willing to tear into it. If they rebuild it, they've got to warranty it. And if they don't feel it's warrantable, they said parts are very difficult to get for it. Anyway, so the route we're going at this point, I need to bring up, because I hadn't really thought of this, but in the big generator project, the phasing of that was we were going to put in this new generator and the transfer switches for both the newer buildings and the old building. and we were going to feed over to the new buildings and get them all tied in. Then as part of the master improvement project, as we did the renovations of acute care and ER, et cetera, the new electric panels for emergency would go in and get wired and would be brought over and tied into the new generator. So it was going to actually take 5 years or so to cut the old building over onto the new generator. Well, that changed when that generator the old original generator would have to remain functional for the next 5-6 years. And obviously it's dead now. So that changed how we're looking at this. So right now I'm pulling some various load tests on panels of the existing emergency loads, not the revised emergency loads when we rebuild everything. Because I've already had conversations with HCI, both the field staff and the Sacramento staff, that what we're planning on doing, they're going to go ahead and approve the main generator project to proceed. And then we are going to submit plans as a change order, an ACD, to that project to bring over the existing loads of the old building as part of the generator project. At which point, then we can get rid of the temporary generator, et cetera. Then as we rebuild through the master improvement plan, we'll put in new panels and bring them over and tie them in and delete the old ones that are going away. So it just changes the phasing of things. But that was something that came up because everybody was assuming that that old generator could last through the life of the master improvement project. So that was the little wrinkle that got thrown in here with the failure of this generator.
Wow. Never easy, is it?
Nope, it's kept me awake a few nights.
Wow.
50-year-old equipment, I guess is right. 60-year-old equipment.
Yeah.
Does-
All right.
Would SCE or someone like that have a generator that they could let us have it at a better price, or maybe even help us out and park it there?
It never hurts to ask, but it's not likely they're going to just say, here's one that we're not sitting around. Where we're at on the existing loaner, or the loaner that we have, or the rental, we've pulled an emergency authority proceed with HCI. We have a permit number. I've submitted the 8 questions and answers and everything. They're reviewing them. They have issued the emergency authority to proceed, which follows an installation which is already done. The only thing that I have to do as part of that project is I'm going to have to add some little seismic restraints to the trailer mount generator so that it can't roll off in an earthquake. And I'm going to have to probably add a monitored status monitor of that generator in acute care, which is a rather simple project. It's hang it on the wall, plug it in, and run a wire out to the generator. Other than that, so in other words, the process of permitting that rental is well underway.
Okay.
We have, like I said, if you remember back during the fire, the Erskine fire, we in fact did have a generator that was brought in here. I think it was by.
Yeah, Edison through, it wasn't owned by Edison, but Edison provided it from a power company that provides portable generators. It was in a semi-trailer.
Yeah.
It was a 1250 kW Cummins owned generator. And they wired it directly into our transformer out here and powered the entire facility. It had no issue whatsoever carrying 100% of the facility in the summertime with all the air conditioning on.
Yeah, great.
But that was done due to, the situation of the Erskine fire and, the likelihood of Edison just offering us up one
Well, our bidding with all the power poles that were down and
Well,
everything
right,
else.
they were all burned down and it was gonna
Get
take,
the hospital restored. So-
several weeks to get the power back on, which it did. And so we ran on, it allowed us to reopen probably 2 weeks earlier than if we had not had it.
The 4,200 a month, if you told them that it was gonna take a year, could you get maybe a little better price leasing it for a year than?
Actually, that already is an extended period of time lease.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because we figured it was gonna be a long
Yeah.
period. And
I wish, but I mean, I will tell you this, though, it is an awesome little generator. Code requires the generator to start and transfer the load in 10 seconds or less. Our newest generator on diesel takes 8 seconds. The old and one that died, it was on propane, so it actually fired faster. It would transfer in 6 seconds. This new one starts and transfers in 4.5 seconds.
That'd be good if you were under surgery in there.
Absolutely.
definitely.
Yep.
So another generator source to keep in mind, at least for a fire, if there's some emergency, I think that FEMA has acquired a bunch of generators to supply hospitals with power during disasters. And so if we have another fire and lose power again, it may be something to keep in mind if we need one.
Good thought.
Yeah. Hopefully by the next time we have a fire that we'll have the Tesla system and the new generator system and we'll be sitting pretty.
Yeah. I know we're going to get there eventually. We're doing the right things. It's just, man, talk about complex.
Yep.
It is.
Hey, Bob, you know a lot about gauges on wires and stuff. I live across the street there. An extension cord running from the hospital over to my house. How heavy wire would I have to have?
It'd probably have to be about number 6s or something for the distance, but all we got to do is get one of those little plastic things with the hollow spot in it to go across the road.
I figured you'd already done that, so.
Well, I'm thinking about it.
I remember that was during the fire too. We had that camper, that guy brought his camper up.
That's
and we
right.
were
Yeah, we had people
Providing them power through the laboratory. I mean,
Yeah, we had people park in the parking lot and plug in extension cords because they were on life support.
Wow.
yeah.
Wow. Okay. The trailer boiler chiller project.
Yeah, it's supposed to say train, something.
Train. Okay.
It's a little typo there. Okay, I was hoping to have wonderful news to say that we had passed. And unfortunately, my hopes were dashed. The fire marshal came and everybody came, and the fire marshal was not happy with the location of the sensors for the refrigerant monitor system. So he said, I will be back in a few weeks once you have placed the sensors where I think they should be as compared to where they are.
Were they not there when he was there last time?
Yeah, but he apparently didn't look at them.
Okay, so now let's delay it some more.
Yeah, so we're delayed again. I had Train come out, and because they of course questioned whether they should have to pay for doing something. And so I sent them the report from the fire marshal. So they admitted they need to relocate them. They are scheduling their person right now. I hope to get an email here in the next few days as to when he will be here to relocate the sensors. And then we will reschedule the fire marshal and we'll have everybody back and we'll test the sensors. And if we pass that one last issue, we can then close the project.
Okay. Questions, comments?
No, I love what he said when he first started talking about this part, hospital improvement program. I support that.
I
don't
did that
support-
just
I
for
know,
you,
I know
Gene.
what you did. I don't support no upgrade, but improvement program I do.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, the clinic cabinet replacement. Looks like we have dates for installation.
Yes, those are dates that were chosen by this gentleman here to my left. And so that is what we're shooting for. And I will have several of my staff and myself here. It's going to be a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. and we will work through the weekend and get it done.
That's done.
Done. D-U-N.
Meant to a whole new facility. It'd be beautiful.
Yeah.
It'll make a huge,
Oh,
Yeah.
it will.
So this is the clinic cabinet improvement project?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Questions or comments?
Do we need any motion or anything to, that's just automatically done?
Yeah, it's just.
That's already been approved.
Yeah.
It already looks great. I don't know how you can improve it.
Oh, we can always improve something.
Okay, dietary water heater, number 2.
Okay, so demolition is complete. The area is cleaned, ready to go. The equipment arrival is supposed to be, I believe, March 15th.
March.
Oh,
Wait a minute, I'm sorry.
This is April.
May, excuse me, May 15th, one of those M months.
Got my ear. That's right.
And yeah, so in about 2.5 weeks, we should have the equipment arriving. All of my fittings and pipe and pretty much is all arrived. I'm just awaiting on the tank and the heater. And as soon as those arrive, we will be moving full steam ahead with the installation of that.
all right. Questions or comments? Okay, Pixis.
Okay, so all of the equipment has arrived except for one of the double towers, which is supposed to arrive next week. The mounting plates, seismic mounting plates are all installed. We have to just have the testing lab test the anchor bolts, which we've pre-torqued, so we know they're going to pass. I have a little bit of electrical to run in acute care. And we had to go back and forth because access out of that panel and above that room is physically impossible. We spent days trying to figure out how we could crawl into that space and run it the way we had on the plans. So it took then engineers redirecting us. So we're ready to finish the electrical and acute. And then at this point, our go live date with Pixis and the pharmacy is the 9th of this next month. And so we will easily meet that from the construction side of all the anchor plates in, all the electrical run, all the data hooked up. And so that is completely on track at this point.
Well, heck, looks like about 3 of these projects you're actually getting to the end of. That's great.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the pharmacy HVAC.
Okay, so that is going very well. Yesterday and today we are running the ductwork. So we'd obviously had already set the unit, set the booster fan, and set the HEPA filter. And they are now, the outside basic ductwork is installed. They're hanging the inside ductwork today and tomorrow. The electricians will be here tomorrow to finish running the electrical and the control wiring. And so if all goes well, hopefully we can bump it and see if it actually comes on and works maybe sometime next week. I have some air balance work that has to be done before it would be ready to close with HCI. But I can't close it with HCI because it hasn't passed plan review yet.
Okay.
We're under that emergency authority to proceed. So we are nearing the end of the construction portion of it. And then hopefully no big wrinkles. So far, there's been no big wrinkles coming out of HCI. They had pretty much bought off on the whole design. So it's just a matter of we got to go through the steps, but it's going very, very well.
Good. Do we retest after this HVAC system is in place?
Yeah, we'll need to. You mean the environmental testing?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna probably have to, just to make sure that the filtration system is working appropriately and so
Yeah.
forth. Because we're gonna cap off the old air handler as well, so.
Right.
Which is why he's got to do some air balancing and stuff like that.
Right, there's some air balancing there's some pre and post air balancing that I have to do. They have to come in and they have to measure the flows off of that air handler and the exhaust system, what they currently are. And then when we fire up the system, they have to air balance the new system because it has to have 1,000 CFM into the room and it has to have 900 out and 100 outside air makeup. And that all has to be balanced with dampers. And then when that's done, we cap off the supply and return that go to that room currently. And when those are capped off, we have to come back and we have to rebalance the areas supplied by that air handler, which is basically medical records and those rooms at that end of the administrative hallway. So that's in progress.
All right. Questions or comments? Okay, then let's move to item F, which is the master plan emergency generator that requires action. So page 6 in your packet.
Can I make a motion that we accept it the way it's presented by Bob? I think we've all looked at it, right?
Well, the motion's fine.
Okay.
Do we have a second?
I'll second Ross.
Thanks, John. Okay, then discussion.
Okay.
You want to do any questions of this?
Ross, I have one question on it.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're looking at a diesel standby versus propane fired.
To my knowledge and my questions, no one makes a generator this large that runs on propane.
Okay, that's fine. I don't have an issue with that. The question I have is this. Diesel does go bad as fuel does. How are we going to rotate that fuel through so we keep fresh fuel in those tanks?
The same way that I currently am, because our existing tank is 10,000 gallons. Currently, I'm keeping it at about between 5,000 and 6,000 gallons of diesel in the tank. There's a requirement from CDPH that I annually have the fuel scrubbed, cleaned, and tested. So we currently do that. So once a year, I have a company called Super Sweeps who comes up from Bakersfield, and they drop a sump down into the bottom of the tank. They pump the diesel out and they pump it through a filtration system. It pulls out any water, sediments, debris out of the diesel, and it'll go. If you take samples in a diesel tank after a year, at the top, it'll be fairly clear, but in the bottom, it'll be muddy and not in good shape. So
Correct.
they filter it and then they put a treatment into it to give it more longevity. And then they take a diesel sample and it's sent off to a lab to verify that it is still good quality diesel.
There's no way to stir those tanks, is there?
No,
No, and
that's done annually.
even diesel stored underground has a max life of about 26 to 28 months, and it's contaminated. It's toast.
That's right. That's why we annually completely refurbish it.
But they're not actually emptying and refilling. Well, let me rephrase that. They are doing that, but they're not putting fresh product in. They're just reworking the product that's in the ground and then putting an additive into it.
They are reworking it so that it meets the criteria of fresh diesel. And that has to be proven by a laboratory test.
Okay.
What's that cost per year?
It's about $2,000 to $3,000.
Oh, that's nothing. That's cool.
It's much cheaper than replacing the diesel.
Yeah. Or converting it to a propane.
Yeah. How much of that do we use in a year? I mean, obviously with testing. It's not much.
We don't use a lot because we only have the one small generator, which that generator burns approximately, if I remember right, about 15 gallons an hour. And of course, we run it for about 45 minutes once a month and about 10, 15 minutes, other than power failures.
Yeah.
So obviously that diesel has been in there since the year 2000, and it tests perfect after it's been refurbished by Super Sweeps. Now I will say I did add about 1,800 gallons to it about a year and a half ago. And obviously when we go with the 1,000 kW generator, we're going to have to keep the tank relatively full because we need about 96 hours of runtime. And 1,000 kW at say 70% load, if I remember right, that's going to burn approximately about 38 to 40 gallons an hour. And so obviously when you multiply that by 96 hours of runtime, I don't quote me on those. I have a sliding table in my office where I can take the generator size and its load, what its load capacity is, and it tells me the burn rate per hour. But we will have to keep the tank a little fuller. It might cost us a little bit more each year to have it swept and cleaned. But yeah, but the 10,000 gallons meets the criteria that and the amount of hours of runtime that's required by CDPH.
So Bob, on this this matter for which we have a motion and a second is to purchase the generator parts, as you were talking about earlier. Is that correct?
Yes, the generator, the transfer switches, and the day tank specifically.
So we have just this one quote. Do we not have others to look at?
We can do one of two things. We could either approve this today, but I will approach Cummings Onan and see if they are willing to quote it. I approached them about a year and a half ago, multiple times, saying I'm looking to purchase 1,000 kW generator, transfer switches, etc. Please get back to me. And no one ever got back to me. So, but obviously to meet Scott's criteria, I have got to get something in writing that either they can provide a quote or that they decline. Scott said he would accept a declination to bid.
So then it becomes a sole source bid.
Right. But we've approached the other supplier that has in the past done a lot of hospitals, but everybody I'm talking to says Cummings Onan is phasing out of hospitals. They don't want the headache. And Quinn is stepping forward and saying they have shaker table units ready and are willing to do it. So we can either wait a month and I will have an answer from Cummings, or we could proceed on the premise that I will get an answer from Cummings. We just lost somebody.
I'm back. It's been acting up all day.
Well, we lost Ross too. Oh no, you moved to the upper right corner.
Somebody dropped off.
You changed locations on the screen, Ross. Sorry.
Ross, can I amend my motion to approve it with Scott's acceptance of whatever he needs to do
for a
to
second
make it
bid?
legal?
Sure. So your motion will be something to the effect that this purchase is approved pending our council's review and acceptance.
Yes.
Of the sole source.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll concur with the second.
Thank you, John. Okay, now any other discussion? I did have one more question, Bob. Is this $500,000 price about what we had anticipated, or is it not in the ballpark?
2 years ago, I had estimated it out at about 480,000. Obviously, prices have changed a little. The sizes of the transfer switches changed. I had actually gotten costing several years ago from Quinn, and it was in the mid 400s. But I sat down and reviewed that one compared to the new one, and the electrical engineer had upsized several of the transfer switches, which are very expensive. And so, plus just inflation a little bit. So yes, it is where I expected it to be.
Okay, that's within 10% of 480, so heck, that's not bad.
Yeah.
Bob, I have one question that you might not be able to answer. What's a realistic number on the contractor's side of this?
I have budgeted it about 480,000 for their piece.
So we're gonna be at $1 million project, basically.
Million to $1.2 million. I've done several of these projects and they are expensive. Electricians are one of the most expensive trades.
Thank you.
Okay. So if unless there are any other questions, I'm going to call for a vote. So Gene, your vote?
Yes,
John?
Yes.
Fred?
Yes.
Catherine?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
Okay, there aren't any invoice review approvals to look at. So before I adjourn, Tim, is there anything else that needs to be discussed?
Not to my knowledge, no. Like I said, the plan of correction activity is going on nicely. I've got 2 left to do and I should be able to get those done here. Mark's reviewing them as we go. Heidi is typing them up right now. And we're gonna get them out to the team to look at before the end of the day.
Excellent, excellent work. Okay, then we are adjourned. We'll see you in a few days.
You got it.
Have a good one.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is gonna be recorded. It already is.